Hi guys, Jamie from Heartfelt Horsemanship here. We have Gareth and Cherokee. We're going to talk about why we do the one rein riding. We have a lot of people who are studying the course who go, but you want me to ride at the buckle? And they've been given sort of a false sense of security in thinking that riding with two reins is actually keeping them safe, when in fact those two reins short actually can make you a projectile object. It's also inhibiting your horse's forward movement. So Gareth is going to show us a little bit of one rein riding, and then we're going to talk about why we need to ride rein in the mane. So Gareth is going to go through his movements. You can see he has a direct rein. You can see he has an indirect rein. You can see he can direct Cherokee forward. Now if you notice Gareth's legs, he's making sure that he uses his legs. That's one of the good reasons to ride with one rein riding, is it really helps you learn to use your body and your focus more. Now, just to change the other rein, if you need to, you can just flip it over the horse's head, and it's something that you would practice on the ground first. The idea of riding with one rein terrifies most people, but the only thing better than two reins is one rein. The only thing better than one rein is riding with a stick. And that is to help your horse learn to listen to your focus and to teach us that we need our hands very little. So Gareth has moved up into a trot. You can see he still has a direct rein, but watch his leg. He's moving. And it's all right if you fumble. Your horses are going to forgive you. You know, if you don't flip that rope over quite perfectly, that's all right. You will get to where it feels second nature to. I also gave Gareth a rather short rope too, so that's my bad. Okay, so you can see Gareth is using eyes, belly button, leg. His leg is very active in that turn. His leg is not squishing. The other leg is just hanging down there doing nothing. So this teaches you to use one leg at a time. Two legs are for forward and backward. One legs are for all lateral movement, be it the forequarters or hindquarters. See, Gareth will pick Cherokee up into a canter. And he has that one rein. If he needs to bend that horse to a stop with that one rein, he can do it. We don't care if we get a little bit of lost. The better your focus is, the better you and your horses become, the better your partnership's going to be. And you will get this. And you can see Cherokee starting to loosen up, get some focus. Gareth can stop, do some precision stops. He can use his seat. And you can see, if Gareth were pulling on two reins through that, it would be stopping Cherokee's motion. So now we're going to start talking about why we ride at the buckle, or rein in the mane. We're going to have some help here just clipping on that second rein. Okay, so many of you have been taught that all of your safety comes from two reins. Gareth is going to talk about the boiling frog and why riding rein in the mane matters.
Hi guys. Okay, so the questions that come in, most people say, well, is it okay that I just ride with two reins and I'm riding on a loose rein? So when we talk about a loose rein is there. And a finesse rein is there. Anything in between is BS. It's nonsensical. So the reason we do the greater proportion of our riding on a loose rein is it makes your horses more responsive.
If a horse cannot stand, walk, trot, canter, or gallop on a casual rein, they're out of control.
Yeah, so from that point of view, we want to check that out. But the other aspect is people say, well, can't I just do all the other stuff? But for this thing, I prefer having two reins. That's great, you can carry on, but you're not going to get the results we get. Your horse is not going to be as light and responsive. And that's when we talk about the boiling frog. Boiling frog is an urban legend about a study that was done where a frog is put into hot water, it jumps right out. But if you put it into lukewarm water and slowly boil it, it'll boil itself to death. Now, when we go from a completely loose rein, even if I don't use my legs and I lift my rein, my horse is nice and responsive, because the dynamic between nothing and something is higher. Okay? When I have a tight rein, in particular, I have a tight rein on both sides, I lose that lightness. You see,
You lose the ability to flex the front end over and steer appropriately if your horses have not gone through all of the steps to get to a finessed rein.
What's happening is that I'm picking up on two sides. Even if I have the BS reins that you often see people ride with, and I pick up there, I'm still holding too much of a contact. So exactly the same amount of pressure is not going to have the same result as when I go from loose rein to picking up a cue.
Which means operant conditioning is going to be undone as quickly as you're building it in there. That is the process. That's why we have the phases. We want to start with the lightest phase and go to the firmest phase necessary. But as your horse becomes more sensitive, if the rein is sometimes up, say 10 centimeters off the wither, and then other times it's up by your nose, and other times it's somewhere around your knee, your horse is not going to listen to your reins because you haven't been following the steps of operant conditioning. Now, as your horses become more sensitive, those reins are going to mean something if you're actually following the steps. I know it takes a lot of trust to go, I'm going to go down and ride rein in the mane, so at the buckle, nice smiling reins. But you are actually going to end up undoing the training that you're doing, and it's going to make things harder for your horse.
So what you see happen here is on the contact rein, you see Cherokee's feeling pressure on both sides, and you can see that's a pretty light touch. So he's picking that up as meaning a shape. And when we get to riding our finesse work, our legs do the directing, and this is all about shape, eye contact with the rein. But we do that a small amount so we don't dull our horse. We want to don't wear out your cues. And by riding like this, we're cueing this side as well as this side. Whether you're riding in a bit or a halter, the knots are activating on a halter and the bit is activating on both sides, which causes some confusion. Now, we're going to have some people talking about inside leg to outside rein here. There is no space for inside leg to outside rein at foundations.
Right now we're building a foundation.
It's about getting a correct bend. And that is for higher work. When we're building foundations, we want to build individual responses. So can
see Gareth's one leg comes on.
My inside rein? Can my horse respond to my outside rein? We put that all back together later, but if we put it all on at the same time, all the time, you're going to wear out those cues.
Yes.
Now, when I get to riding finesse, I will pick up on two reins. But yeah, I'm not steering with those two reins. I'm using my legs to steer. So they're never going to learn the legs if you pick up from the get-go.
So we're steering with our eyes, our belly button, our leg, and mostly the twist of our pelvis. So our reins can be reserved for making a shape or a flexion in our horse. If we are balancing on our reins for our own sense of security instead of balancing on our bums independently from the horse, we end up pulling on those reins, and just about the time we ask our horse to go faster, we've got these short reins that are bumping them on the nose saying don't go faster. And the most likely thing to happen if a horse gets frustrated at that point or gets frightened is you're going to have a nice projectile point for your horse to pull on those two reins and pull you right over their head. This is teaching you how to not have that happen. If you start riding at the buckle and you get a little bit worried, you can always practice your one rein stop into a disengagement. You can go, oh, well, my horse is okay, I'm okay, and then you can try again. So Gareth, we're going to talk about the backup quickly when you're done. Can you go up and down the arena going from walk to trot on the buckle and show what you would do with one rein if you felt unsafe, please?
Okay, so if I am riding with only one rein, and maybe my coordination with the rope isn't good enough to throw it over while we're going, we can, Cherokee will stop with my seat, but I can bend him around, and it's going to give you a chance to practice getting your horse off your seat. From a standstill, I can
Notice how slow Gareth does actually activate his one rein stop. He doesn't grab those reins hard and fast. He doesn't make it jerky, so there's no damage to the horse, there's no damage to you, and it makes a nice smooth transition back to a place where you feel safe.
So when people tell me that they're struggling with it and they keep going back to the two reins, I always recommend go to one rein riding. If you cannot throw your rope over the horse's head from the ground, you can't do one rein riding, but you shouldn't be riding your horse either. If your horse throws its head up, you need to get that sorted out before you even get on your horse. I don't ride a horse that's head shy, because if a horse is head shy, our firmest phase of communication with the horse is through the head. If they are holding that back, if they're holding that back, you're going to have an issue.
All right, Gareth, the next question that we had was, sometimes my horse backs up really nicely and it's just, she sits and she wiggles her feet and her horse glides backwards, and then the next day she feels like she's pulling on the reins when she gets her elbows over her hips. So can you please show me an effective 9-step backup?
Okay, so with the back, what you find with the backup is, and it's going to be, Cherokee is really easy with the backup, but I can actually ask for it faster to show you guys what I would do. So if every time you start with your legs, your horse will start backing up from just your legs. And this process of getting all the way down to two reins and then picking up and bringing over your hips is still practiced. When I do my anti-fly check, I still follow all the way through. Now, if I were to get to my hands, my elbows over my hips, I don't pull back like this, because it's going to make my back hollow, and that's going to make my horse's back hollow, and they're not going to back up correctly. They're going to evade there and maybe push their front feet backwards. What we want is we want a backwards trot when we ask for a backup. Let me show you again. So Cherokee is trotting in reverse. It's a diagonal movement. Okay. Now even Cherokee there, I went too much to my rein, and you can see kind of got wiry through the neck. So go for contact, but not too tight, and you'll see your horse stay smoother. And
What we want when we do pick up the contact on that rein is we want them to break over at the pole vertically, and when they break over at the pole vertically, the pole softens, and it softens them from their pole clear down to their hocks. If your horse has had a history of being stiff, or you've been riding on too tight reins and they misunderstand it, might take you a little bit more time, but it's more effective to help your horse back up this way because it puts them in the appropriate shape to back up if you do need to help them with their reins.
now if you were backing your horse up and they hit a point where you get to there and they aren't backing up, first thing I would do is say wait. And once they get to that brace point, you're not going to ask for 4 steps backwards or 10 steps backwards. You're going to even take a lean backwards to give a release. I would say that if half the time it works and half the time it doesn't, watch how fast you're doing it. If you're going quick down to that, get to 2 reins, the horse will immediately brace and they'll lock up.
If you look at Cherokee's face while Gareth is just demonstrating that without touching the reins, you can actually see that he's going, wait, what are your hands saying, and why are you going so fast? We are retraining ourselves from our predatory instinct of grabbing things hard and fast for safety and when we feel insecure. We need to reprogram ourselves to be horsemen. The hands of a horseman move slow and steady, and that's why we end up with horses that respond lightly and quickly. So if that's kind of what's going on with your backup and you end up stuck a little bit, it's likely a little bit of inconsistency. The other thing I want Gareth to talk about is, Gareth, can you talk about how you're going to sit down and not lean back? It's actually squishing your spine, bringing your chin down towards your pelvis. It's not about leaning towards the butt.
So, as much as we do all these exaggerated movements through our foundation so that we can have as much differentiation between cues, we still actually want our shoulders over our hips, and for most of the riding we're going to have a straight line down. Our neutral is straight line down, shoulders, hips, heels. But what we see happening is when we tell people to put their feet forward for the backup, And you know, when we're riding, if we're running a dressage test or even something like trail, our feet forward goes to about there, and then we'll ask for a backup. Um, so we just exaggerate for the teaching phase. But even when I do the exaggeration, I'm sliding down my pockets rather than moving my shoulders back. That's if I do this, I'm sitting on the point that I want him to carry his weight, which means that I'm making him ineffective on the backup. So I want to put my feet forward, keep my shoulders over my hips, engage my core, and then I'll ask for the backup.
Now, the engagement of the core comes in later on in finesse riding. So this is the first time, and anywhere in our modules 1 through 6, there is no place that we teach you to carry tight collected reins, because this is a foundation program. When we are preparing our horses for performance, a horse like Cherokee who is completely through the program and prepared for performance, then we'll pick up on 2 reins. But the rest of the time you guys are going to be riding this so it becomes second nature to you. And then we can start talking about getting to those performance style reins and what those 2 reins mean when they are shorter. But if you don't have a foundation in this, it's going to be really tough for you to get there. So hang in there, keep trying. Gareth, do you have anything else to add?
Just one thing on so where I was getting to with the backup, if you get to your 2 reins and your elbows over your hips and the horse really shuts down on you and doesn't go, you can widen your elbows to get more contact. But the idea is that we don't have to use more force. The idea is that we're going to wait.
We're not going to bring our elbows back farther.
We're just going to wait there until he figures out. So with Cherokee, I'm going to give a release when he does a nice fast one. There we go. I will wait for that fast one rather than ask with more pressure. Cool, that's it.
Alright, I hope that answers some questions. Please let us know if you have any more questions, anything you'd like us to demonstrate for you. You can send us an email, heartfeltkzn@gmail.com. If you're interested in our correspondence course, you can email that same address. And if you would like to visit a little bit about something that you're stuck with, you can send me a WhatsApp, 072-362-2620. Have a great day.